Imagine being trapped in the middle of a snowstorm with no way out. The cold bites at your skin, and all you can hear is the howling wind. But what if I told you that there are stories, true stories, of people who not only had to survive the elements, but also something far darker? Tonight, we're diving into 3 chilling snowstorm horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. But before we begin, if you love scary stories and true horror, make sure you hit that like button, comment below your thoughts, and subscribe to True Nightmares for more spine-tingling tales. Our first story takes us deep into the remote wilderness of the Canadian Rockies. It's the dead of winter, and a hiker named Mark sets off on what was supposed to be a peaceful solo trek through the mountains. He's done it many times before, so when a snowstorm rolls in unexpectedly, he thinks nothing of it. After all, he's got his gear, his skills, and plenty of experience. But there was one thing Mark didn't count on: the storm and something else that was following him. As the storm picked up, Mark found himself lost and disoriented. The snow was coming down so hard that it completely swallowed up the landscape. His path was gone. He couldn't see where he was going. The cold bit into him, and worse, there was no signal to call for help. Then, in the freezing darkness, Mark began hearing something else. A voice. It was faint at first, carried by the wind, but it was unmistakable. It was calling his name. At first, Mark thought it was just his mind playing tricks on him. The storm was messing with his head, right? But as the voice grew louder and closer, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Desperate to find whoever it was, he ran toward the voice, convinced that someone was out there calling for help. But when he reached the clearing, there was nothing. No one. Just the howling wind and the thick blanket of snow. Mark stood there, heart pounding, looking around. Was it the storm playing tricks on him? Or was someone else stalking him through the snow? The last time Mark was seen, he was running through the woods screaming for help. But when rescue teams found his body days later, there were no signs of struggle, no visible wounds. His body was frozen, but the most chilling part was his face, locked in a look of pure terror. He was never alone out there, and we may never know who or what was with him. Next, we head to the small remote town of Aspen Creek, Colorado. A family of 4 decided to take a winter retreat in a cabin deep in the mountains. It was supposed to be a peaceful getaway, far away from the noise of the world. But things took a dark turn when a snowstorm suddenly struck. As the storm worsened, the family realized they were stuck. The roads became impassable, and soon the power went out. They were trapped in the cabin. And then they started hearing strange noises, scratching sounds at the windows, faint whispers coming from the walls, and worst of all, the sound of heavy footsteps moving across the roof. At first, the family tried to brush it off. They convinced themselves it was just animals, maybe a raccoon or a mountain lion. But when they checked the roof the next morning, they found something that made their blood run cold. The footprints weren't from any animal, they were human, and they led right up to the edge of the roof. But then, they disappeared into the snow. Terrified, the family decided to leave, but when they opened the door to their car, the storm had gotten worse. The snow, it was deeper than they remembered. They had no choice but to turn back to the cabin. But when rescue teams finally arrived days later, the cabin was empty. The family was gone. There were no signs of a struggle, just the eerie silence and the footprints in the snow leading nowhere. Our final story is one of the most unsettling. In 1999, 2 truckers, James and Carl, were driving through the icy stretches of Highway 93 in Alaska, known as the Ice Road. They'd been through countless snowstorms, so this was just another routine delivery, until they found themselves caught in a blizzard like no other. The storm hit without warning, and soon they were stranded in the middle of nowhere, miles from any kind of civilization. They tried radioing for help, but the signal kept cutting out. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and the cold, it was unbearable. Then things started to get strange. They began hearing a tapping on the windows of their truck. At first it was soft, almost like ice scraping against the glass. But soon the tapping grew louder, more urgent, more aggressive. Both men were awake, huddled together for warmth, when they realized the tapping wasn't coming from outside the truck. It was coming from within, coming from the walls of the truck itself. Terrified, they tried to leave, but the storm was too fierce. The truck wouldn't start, and the tapping continued, growing more frantic with every passing hour. Desperate to find the source, they opened the door, only to find nothing. No footprints, no sign of anyone at all. Days later, rescue teams found the truck. Inside there was no sign of James or Carl. They had vanished without a trace. The truck was still running, but the only thing left behind was the eerie tapping sound. It never stopped. So, what do you think? Could these snowstorm horrors be the work of nature, or something far darker? Whatever the truth is, these chilling tales serve as a warning to all who dare venture into the wild when the snow begins to fall. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to True Nightmares. We've got more terrifying tales on the way that you won't want to miss. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, the night is never as quiet as it seems.